Hey, deserving listeners, the Ultimatum Queer Love Season 2. Let's check it out and see what comes flying out of my face. I said that fast. Let's see what comes flying out of my face. Sometimes in jumbled fashion.
And nobody cares for me like you do. You've seen me through all my darkest days.
Right, the way the music is playing, it sounds like this is an engagement, but it's not clear.
Brittany. Would you do me the greatest honor?
It's interesting. I wonder if in the previous seasons that it's the ultimatum giver that proposes. But, I'm pretty sure Brittany's going to say yes here because I will say that there's the one theme that they've talked about or that they've decided as a couple that they want to share with the world, because I'm guessing there's some conversations about what to share in front of the camera, is that AJ feels inadequate career-wise and wants to be more established as Brittany. There's also been a little bit of talk about AJ feeling like Brittany isn't prioritizing AJ enough and prioritizing her career too much. It's hard to know what all of that means. The simplistic interpretation is there, but I'm guessing it's more complicated than that. I don't know. Typically, at least in my cultural pocket, it wouldn't be a reason not to marry someone. It might be something that you wished you had already established before marriage, but love is love, and forever is forever, and family is family. And sure, your career, if you were immediately going to have kids or something after getting married, then having the security to have that capacity, but they're not talking like that. So it made me wonder if it was something deeper than that. Some people in AJ's shoes will feel like humiliated or something, but AJ didn't seem to be coming across that way. So I don't know. It almost seemed, I wouldn't be surprised if all that was true, which I'm not saying they're lying, but I wouldn't be surprised if the real AJ Brittany story was way more complicated than that, and they just decided they were just going to show one of the 5 things on the list, the least vulnerable or something. I don't know. But if that were true, I wouldn't be surprised if AJ had some sort of severe anxiety related to early childhood regarding career and security and money or something. It also almost seemed like AJ was worried that if they weren't in the same place career-wise, that Brittany would actually leave AJ for someone that was more financially secure. And so AJ was thinking, well, I don't want to marry her because I'm going to be constantly worried about Brittany leaving me for someone else. And maybe there's some history there where Brittany has colleagues that are as successful or even more successful, and there was some concern there, some sort of threat. So as I say that out loud, that's not uncommon, right? Particularly if AJ has a history of that. Maybe AJ was left along those lines in a similar scenario, or AJ had a parent where that seemingly happened. Usually it's way more complicated than the way kids can understand it, but it can look that way, Mom cheated on dad because mom has a rich boss, and the fights that I saw between my parents had to do with money. You walk away with this simplistic story, and then you take that into adulthood and you get real locked in on something like that. Who knows? But yeah, I'm guessing that this is a yes.
And to marry me. Oh, wow. Yes, baby. Oh, my God.
They do seem like a cute couple, and this couple, I think maybe Kyle and Bridget as well, they didn't really show us much, which either means they don't have much to show in terms of conflict and drama, or they just didn't decide to do that or didn't fall out that way. So, we did see a bit of, AJ and Marie and that kind of stuff, but for the two of them, yeah, I'm trying to remember what we learned about them in the beginning of the season. 5 years together. Their families have merged over time. And let's see. There's not really, I'm not seeing, nothing's really jumping out here. And oxtail soup. Oh, by the way, the oxtail soup thing, I think is similar to Spam musubi for Japanese Americans, in that for Hawaiians and Japanese Americans, even mainland Japanese Americans, we were in, my ancestors were in the camps, imprisoned. My citizens, born in the United States. So how history repeats itself, were rounded up, all Japanese Americans, every person of Japanese descent, even people that were grandchildren of people that had immigrated here. And by the way, all of the immigrants from Japan and that were in the camps had come here legally. They were not, plus how anyway. So they were rounded up. My family was rounded up into prisons. And prison actually makes it sound nicer than it was. It's actually worse than prison because they were basically in the elements in Wyoming. Imagine the summers and the winters, and the buildings were just these plywood shacks with no insulation and blah blah blah. Anyway, so during their imprisonment, they were given rations by whatever means possible, right? And since the government didn't give a shit about them, they were given army rations, since they transport well and all that kind of stuff. And so part of the army rations was Spam. That's where it got its start, as far as I know. And the prisoners, my ancestors, would have limited protein. They're given rice and I'm guessing some vegetables. They also learned to grow their own vegetables because they were there for so long. But they would take the Spam and they would fry it up and cook it with rice. And after the war, they were accustomed to it. It's like, and especially the kids, right? Because the kids were shielded emotionally from the process often. In fact, some of the kids actually enjoyed it because they did go to school, but it was limited school. And there were all these friends. It was like camp for the kids. So some of the kids, like George Takei and others, will report fond memories of that time. Also traumatic memories, seeing grandma and grandpa struggle and cry at night. It's mixed bag. But anyway, so Japanese Americans, mainland, would miss the good old days with Spam and started to incorporate it more into meals, because Spam is objectively disgusting. And yet, it's made to be in a can to go to war. So meat in a can that a soldier would have in his backpack so that in a pinch he can stuff calories down his face so that he could kill more. You're not going to spend a lot of time making the meat extremely... there's trade-offs, right? You're trading off the ability to preserve it, right, with taste and other kind. Anyway, and cheaply, be able to make it. It's kind of like hot dog stuff, and I will say that the Spam in the past was more noticeable chunks of stuff. Now it's, I think, more expensive, and in the past there was all that gelatin, there was all that jelly that was with the Spam. Now there's almost none of that. It's a lot, I think, better quality. I don't know. Anyway, so, and they have different kinds, and my mouth is watering. They have lower sodium and whatever. Anyway, I usually get the low sodium. Anyway, so there's that. In Hawaii, since World War II, there were Hawaiians and also Japanese Americans that were still there on the island, and they would eat the Spam because there were rations on supplies. And so if you were just a citizen living in Hawaii, then you had to eat army rations because they weren't given other things. And anyway, point is that mainland Japanese people would make spam and eggs and rice spam and rice and eggs, or spam and rice or something. Hawaiians would make it in spam musubi and what you would, the little sushi things. Then everyone comes together after the war, and spam becomes soul food. It becomes not Japanese, because Japanese people won't eat spam because it's objectively disgusting, but to Japanese Americans, it becomes something that was originally eaten in a pinch, eaten out of necessity, eaten out of resilience and oppression and racism, and you lean into it. It becomes yours. It becomes distinctive. It becomes a symbol of pride, a symbol of persevering, a symbol of fuck you. If you're going to give us the scraps of the meat and you're going to force us into prison and you're going to give us, we'll eat it and we'll like it and we'll make it actually good. We will actually figure out a way, because we're good at that sort of stuff. We will figure out a way to make this work. And to have spam musubi, to have spam and eggs is a symbol of resilience and power and persevering in the face of, it's almost honoring my ancestors to have spam, The one thing, I am terrible as a cook, but the one thing I can actually nail is spam musubi. I've iterated on it. I use different nori. I actually incorporate other kinds of sauces, and I'll use cream cheese. Don't tell anyone. Mouth is watering. But I will do that. And so it's important. Oxtail soup, from my understanding, is the same for Black people. Maybe for Caribbean Black people, I'm not quite sure. But I don't know the full history, but my sense is that the oxtail was what was discarded by the colonizers or the rich or something, and the oppressed would have to make do, and they made it their own. And then it becomes soul food. It becomes a symbol of resilience and a distinctive feature, and it sort of differentiates, right? Because most people, when they bump up against oxtail soup or spam musubi, they're grossed out, right? So it's a way to encapsulate one's in-group, to draw a boundary. It's like, we don't want you in our group. We don't want you in the spam musubi group. They don't want us in the oxtail soup. Menudo might be similar to, I don't know, but it has that, or durian, for Southeast Asians. I'm trying to think of other things. Kimchi for a lot of Asian countries. But, it's Korean, but you know what I'm saying. So there are barriers of like, this is what natto for Japanese. It's what makes us us. And yes, it's objectively disgusting. And, you can have your stuff. We have our stuff. And this is a symbol of what we had to resort to. I'm sure Europe has this sort of thing too. Like, I don't know if in Ireland they have some things like this. Cabbage soup comes, I don't know. Don't quote me on that. Share in the comments if from your people, what food is that? Louisiana probably has something like that. What is your thing? The thing that now I suppose the soul food doesn't always have to come from struggle and oppression, but comes from making do. It could just be that your people come from a region where there would be famine sometimes, or no one was rich enough to afford X, Y, and Z, so you had to make this other thing. So that was me riffing on spam musubi and the history of the United States and Japanese Americans and Hawaiians and speculating about oxtail soup. I have no idea. Is that true about oxtail soup? The way that I think I've heard other people talk about it, I think it's somewhere along those lines, hopefully. Otherwise, I'm just talking out of my ass, out of my oxtail.
Bridget?
Oh my God.
Oh, will you marry me?
Yes.
Here's your little finger ring.
Oh my.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't really see much in the way of difficulty between the two of them. So it's hard to know. Is that a sign of a lack of difficulty and conflict? or was it just not presented to us? I would say that if I were them, one of them, I would give it more time. They've been together for 2 years. There's nothing, 2 years is a good amount of time, but especially since there was some uncertainty, significant uncertainty for Bridget to get married, I would imagine that some time would be helpful to clarify, make sure, you know what I mean? Not that it's a shame to get married and divorce. As long as there's no kids, it's no harm, no foul. So it's not a big deal. But I will say that for the first time, I'm inspired for the two of them and really pulling for the two of them, because in the lead up to this proposal, for the first time in my experience of watching the show, there was presented to us a legitimate love connection between the two of them. I mean, the goodwill and the emotionality and the eye contact and the chemistry and all that. I'm like, where was this? So I am, for the first time, pulling for the two of them for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.